Hey, Brave OTs. This week's episode was inspired by our guest's desire to share something during the UK's Maternal Mental Health Week. And they have a special invitation for you at the end of the episode to engage in an opportunity to support more people who need support. In this conversation with Jen Anderson Frost, it's part two, by the way. We had episode 55 together, where we talked a lot more about ACT and using ACT as OTs and integrating some of their lived experience. This episode focuses more heavily on their lived experience. So we want to be sure to share a content note. Jen will share some dark moments through their perinatal OCD experience, including intrusive thoughts about harming themselves and their children. I want you to know that everybody remains safe throughout Jen's journey, and they share from a grounded place. If hearing these kinds of experiences isn't right for you right now, that's completely okay. I honor that. Maybe episode 55, our first conversation, is a better fit for you, where we focus more on the ins and outs of the therapeutic approaches and less on their personal journey. I'm recording from Calgary, where I was born and have spent most of my life. This land, with its mountains rolling into foothills and prairies, its Chinook winds and persistent sun, sits within the traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani, as well as the Tsuut'ina Nation and Stoney Nakoda First Nation. I acknowledge the Indigenous peoples who have lived in relationship with this land for thousands of years and continue to call it home. I'm learning what it means to be a respectful settler in this place. Our guest, Jen Anderson Frost, is an OT, a coach, and the founder of OT Intuition. If you haven't listened to episode 55 yet, I'd encourage you to do. You don't necessarily have to start there. They're not continuous. There's a bit of overlap. And you might hear some things here that you heard there as well, so that there's some continuity. Jen shares their story, their personal story of a high-risk pregnancy coupled with profound grief and medical challenges that were layered in with a perinatal OCD episode, and the long, honest, hard-won road back to feeling more themselves. What Jen shares here is rare, and it takes real courage to put it into words. I hope it helps someone else out there feel a little less alone. Let's get into it. You're listening to the Brave OT podcast with me, Carlin Neek. This podcast is all about empowering occupational therapists to step up, level up, blaze some trails, and maybe engage in a little conscious rebellion in service of our profession, our clients, our work, our businesses, and living our mission wholeheartedly. We are all about keeping it real, doing hard things, unhustling, being curious, exploring, growing through our challenges, and finding joy, fulfillment, and vitality as we do so. Really, we're OTing ourselves and each other. I hope you love this episode. Jen, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I was really honored when you reached out to talk about this possibility.
Well, thank you for having me. I feel, honored to be here.
Can you tell the listeners a little bit about you, where you are, what you like to do?
So I'm Jen. I go by she, they pronouns. I'm an occupational therapist licensed in the UK. So I also use the title coach. I interchangeably use intuitive living coach or nervous system coach, depending on who I'm speaking to and their understanding. But yeah, coach is because I also work with people outside of the UK. So I still want them to have access to the support I'm providing. But yeah, can't do that as an occupational therapist. Yeah, I had perinatal OCD 3 years ago. And so I would have only been 2 years into my recovery when I started thinking about OT intuition. So it was very much still at the forefront of, I was still recovering. I would still say I'm recovering, but in a place where I can help others now. Yeah, so that was something that I just started doing, not thinking like that was going to be the way I went. Didn't think I'll go all in with perinatal mental health.
But there you were sharing some passion and lived experience. You were learning, you're living it, you're
Yeah.
adapting. It made sense. That's something you want to share.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought because I was just so passionate about my experience, which I can go into. Yeah, the whole being on the other side of it as a patient because I've worked in mental health before as well. My background is pediatrics, so yeah, children and families, but I've also worked with adults in inpatient units. I've seen that side of mental health from a professional point of view. And yeah, so just doing the podcasts and talking to some of my friends that I'd made through OCD Action, just really it just brought up a lot in me. It just made me question, like, this feels really natural to be doing. Of course, I've got this lived experience and passion to help others. I wouldn't say that my experience in terms of the support I got from professionals was awful, but there was certainly a fair few experiences where I thought there could be a lot more education around what parents are experiencing with. So for me, it was intrusive thoughts. So yeah, in doing the podcast and my friends sharing their experiences, I actually felt that I was quite fortunate with my experience because for one, I was seen by the perinatal mental health team. Others that I was speaking to weren't able to get onto, they were on a very long waiting list or not even able to get onto it because the threshold for the criteria was just so high. And they were really poorly. But I think the thing with perinatal OCD is that there's so much shame and guilt tied into it that you wouldn't necessarily come across as unwell as you actually are. So when you're trying to talk to whoever it is, maybe your GP, your midwife, your health visitor, about what you're experiencing, you really do. You put on a brave face and you're like, "Oh, I think I'm experiencing this," but you really put a dampener on it. You don't really, yeah, dig into
You don't wanna tell the GP that you have these
it.
intrusive thoughts that you're not going to act on. It would be
Exactly.
natural to protect those thoughts from the professional, yet they need to know so they can help you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It was just, yeah, it's really hard to tell this story from start to end, as you can
Yeah.
probably tell, because it is still quite jumbled when you're trying to get it out, because there was just so much involved in my journey
Yeah.
from pregnancy through to, so yeah, I had a quite a traumatic pregnancy. And then during my, excuse me,
Take your time.
whilst I was pregnant, so I had hyperemesis and I had a condition that I can't pronounce with my liver where I had increased bile levels.
Okay.
So it meant that it was a high risk pregnancy, had to go in and just get my bile levels checked quite regularly and just make sure baby was okay. And of course, that for someone who already gets anxiety and has had depression and that in the past, that was just quite a lot to, yeah, just to hold because then it was all the considerations like what medication have I got to take? I had to be on numerous medication and then worrying about the health of the baby and all those things. And within all that, my brother was diagnosed with terminal cancer, so esophagus cancer. Healthy guy in his 40s, doesn't smoke, and just, yeah. I mean, he had strokes in the past, but other than that, it was managed with medication and they were healthy. So it was, yeah, it was, I think we just assumed it was stroke related to the swallowing. But then, yeah, to find out, I think it was around the Christmas time, December, he was experiencing a swallowing difficulty. And then by the February, we got the diagnosis, or January, I think it was. And then I had my youngest in March 23rd, 2023. So 23rd of the 3rd, 2023.
Yeah.
My youngest, my youngest was 5 days old and had a fever. So we were told by 111 emergency services to take him to the hospital just to get checked. He ended up having, it was something that they said they have to do because of his age, having a fever at such a young age. It's protocol that they have to do all these tests. They explained to me that some of them are quite invasive, so it involved a lumbar puncture, and it ended up that we ended up staying in hospital for a few days. They had 9 attempts at trying to get this lumbar puncture
Oh gosh.
just because they're checking for infection.
Yeah.
And yeah, he come back
Mm.
to me and lots of bruising and stuff on his back, and it was very traumatic.
Yeah.
And I've got a blog that sort of goes into a little bit more in that. And yeah, eventually I'll write a book, but it's still, yeah, processing alongside telling the story. But yeah, so we were in hospital. My brother had a stroke and they didn't have any beds for him in the hospital. So um basically eventually had a seizure that he couldn't come out of. And that was about 2 weeks after I'd had my youngest. Yeah, it was just, it's really, you can't make it up. It's just, it was so painful to go through.
Yeah.
And then because of being in the hospital with my youngest and all the, yeah, just all the health complications. I haven't added in that he was born with a fully dislocated left hip as well. So there was also that and a tongue tie, but that's fine. I could deal with that. But yeah, I just felt so overwhelmed. And it started when I was in hospital with him before my brother passed away, really. I just started like making lists. The nurses wanted me to write down every time he had a feed. And then I just started making a list like alongside that of like, how am I going to cope with two children when I get home? And, um, my mum can't help me as much because she's carrying all this stuff for my brother. And then come out of hospital, he passed away. And it was just like, boom, just yeah, just I couldn't carry anymore and I just lost it. I was having panic attacks. The thoughts that I was initially having about not coping with two children got worse, but then turned into these, yeah, horrible thoughts about harming not just my newborn, but my other child too, which is really complicated in itself because I'm a bio and non-bio mum.
Well,
So my our first child that my wife carried, obviously the intrusive thoughts were targeting the fact that they're not my bio child either. So there was all that sort of layer coming into it. And yeah, it's so much to unpick. I don't think any therapist was prepared for me because they just yes, I think they didn't know where to start. So
and did
yeah,
you
my
know to disclose? Because I know that you were saying earlier that there's so often in
yeah.
this experience, there's that shame where we might hold back. But as a health professional, was it different for you? Or
Oh, yeah, no, it was I think it for me, it was I think it was worse because,
Mhm.
I mean, my health visitor was, telling me to go and accept some referrals to, like, some charities. One of them's called Home Start, where someone could come into the house and just sort of be with the boys whilst I don't know, did a bit of housework or something, but they said that I would still have to be around. They're not like a babysitter. And the thought of someone coming into my house and the thought of them maybe needing to know about what I was going through and the judgment of another person. And
Yes.
also just so they're going to look after my child. But, my pride, like I'm capable of that.
Yeah.
I'm really struggling, but I
Be able
have
to
to,
do all of this, like
yes.
physically, I can do this. I shouldn't need help.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember saying, but I refer to them. I don't get, and that sounds so wrong to say because why am I better or, whatever. It's just so much that comes into it. Like, why can I not have the same help that I would tell others to go and get? But I wasn't thinking about that. I was just in such a state of fear and, yeah, dignity.
And what
Just,
if
yeah,
this person, if who is like the person who's sent in to help, right? They probably don't have the same mental health training and background that you do. And
exactly.
so are they coming from a place of not knowing? Are they judging? Are they looking for signs of danger? Because clearly a thought must mean there's an action. Or not being able to I would worry about that too. I'd feel like I need to educate and
Yeah.
and to be overly responsible for what they might think of me because I want to be the best client or
Exactly. And then you're draining your energy on someone else when you want to be putting that into your recovery and your children. But I probably still could have used some help, but I wasn't, it was the uncertainty around what that would look like.
Mhm.
Even though I knew they were very good, I think they're a charity. Yeah. So, yeah, I knew they were very good. I'd referred lots of people to him before, but I just couldn't Even my friend who's a really experienced social worker was saying, "You are the person that needs this help right now. You really need it. And will you accept it?" And I was just like, "Yeah, okay, yeah, so I'll think about it." But I was just not really there. I was just on autopilot and
Yeah.
hearing people saying what they wanted to hear. But
Was
um,
there a moment of a breakthrough moment where you realized, "Oh, wait," like, where that flipped for you?
yeah, so my health visitor, I finally said I would let them refer me to the perinatal mental health team.
Okay.
There was, I think what helped was I spoke to a psychiatrist and they said the word ego-dystonic. And I said, "What does that mean? What does
Yeah.
ego-dystonic mean?" And she said, it is separate from your true self, so your values, your morals. It
Mhm.
is the complete opposite to what you want to do. And that's why you're having that thought. So it's basically OCD is taken what is the most meaningful thing to you, your children, and it's and OCD is just so messed up. It will throw at you the thing
The
that will
worst.
scare you the most, and that would be because initially it was harm. It was thoughts about other people harming them, but then it was, oh, but what if it's you? And then my mind was just like, wow, yeah, thanks for that. What if
Yeah.
it's me? There's nothing
Way
I
to
can.
ratchet that one up a few notches, right?
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
it is
thanks,
like
mind.
literally OCD is like this little gremlin that's just like, "Well, I'm gonna throw this in there then." But once you like
That's bad. Here's a
and you do so yeah, that really helped, and I become more accepting of I think she said something like, "Oh, and I also" she was quite open, but obviously, keeping confidentiality, but said, "Oh, and I spoke to another mum that is a professional in this area today, and they didn't wanna do this with their child because they had similar thoughts to what you're having." And then she said, "I would say I hear these intrusive thoughts daily from different parents."
so much non-judgment in that. First, the label is non-judgment because it actually fully acknowledges that these thoughts are not you, that
Yeah,
they actually are you are the opposite of these
yeah,
thoughts, which in that way I could imagine really takes your defenses down and makes
yeah.
you feel that this professional isn't judging me. They actually see me for who I am. And
Yeah, they were amazing.
that's so good. And then
I know.
also that validation of, yeah, like there are other professionals, like you're not, this isn't the thing that just happens to lay people who don't know better or something like that.
No, I think when you're so in it, I know like with OCD, you're not supposed to have reassurance, you can't engage in compulsions, there's all these different things. But I do think when you are initially just so unwell, and I would say, and I don't use it lightly, but I would say I was nearing thoughts of no longer wanting. I had thoughts of no longer wanting to be here, but I wasn't planning anything as of yet. But certainly had, yeah, very dark thoughts and feelings. So I think when you add that,
Yeah.
the professional needs to, they need to reassure you. You need that safety
Yeah.
just to get to that stage of then you can then try and work on the other things, the real therapy, the gold standard stuff. But initially, you just need someone to say, "I understand you, and you're safe, and it's going to be okay." And I just really needed that, and she did that. And yeah, she was amazing. And then I was accepting of the mental health nurse coming. I
May
did,
I just pause there for a second on that
yes,
piece of you are safe? I think is so key in your own experience of
yeah,
how in that moment your doctor said what indicators she gave you that you're safe. I know we encounter
okay,
all the time people who share thoughts of not wanting to be alive or that they these things, and we're often trying to differentiate between thoughts and actions. But I'm curious
yeah.
in that moment, what was the indicator?
So what she said made me think, "Oh, I'm safe," was, yeah, that the word ego-dystonic, once she explained what that meant, it really just, yeah, took so much weight off of the it made me realize that what I'm thinking is not real and doesn't I'm it when you learn about acceptance and commitment therapy, for example, it will talk about things like entanglement. So I was deep in entanglement with the thoughts that I was having. I was holding them as factual and making them a part of who I was. So overly relating to them and identifying with the
Over
thought.
identifying, very hooked, very connected.
Very
These
hooked.
thoughts are me, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Where
like, I said I remember saying, "I've lost myself. I don't know where Jenna is anymore." And then she was just like, "You're still here. That is ego-dystonic thoughts, and basically, you're in that story right now, but there's this other story, and that is who you've always been." And she just the way she spoke was just so, like, beautiful, and I just needed it. So it was just I was like, "Yes, no, you're right. I am Jenna, and I know that there's other things that have always been of value to me, and they still are. Children are of great value to me, and that is why this is so distressing and so debilitating
Mhm.
because, yeah, because I was struggling to separate the story from myself, and she did that. It was like she got a knife and just obviously not completely. There was still so much work to do, but that was just an initial hug to the part of myself that I couldn't reach. She was able to reach the real me whilst I was so unwell and just
So
remind
she
me that
kind of initiated that distancing process, like in act where we're trying to
yeah,
create space between you and who you are and the thoughts that are a little bit like the weather,
diffusion.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I remember and the conversation went really well, but there was one bit, of course there always is, that my
Sure.
mind did hook onto, and that was just be careful of the word of ego dystonic because that in itself can be used as like a compulsion. So it may be that then every time I had a and I did find myself doing this, but then say, no, that's a compulsion. But every time I had a dark thought, I would say, ego dystonic, doesn't matter, it's ego-dystonic, and then you're not really dealing with it
Yeah, yeah.
because
Wish it
you're
whisk it away. I don't yeah.
yeah, it's like it's still avoidance, isn't it?
Mhm.
Avoidance of what is going on rather than just letting it be. It's like you're batting it away with ego-dystonic, so it's
Mm,
still gonna then come, to the
I hear that.
surface.
I hear
Yeah, it's
that.
gonna come back. Yeah, so although that I clung on to that and that made me quite anxious that something that she had just said that felt so powerful and useful, I then actually couldn't really use too much because that was going to be a compulsion.
And to frame that for the listeners who haven't trained in ACT, I think
Yeah,
it's really important to highlight that when we're using acceptance and commitment therapy, the goal is for us to respond more flexibly to difficult thoughts and feelings and inner experiences or situations, that sort of thing. And very often the enemy is avoidance, right? So experiential
yeah,
avoidance. We're often so much of what we do is to keep ourselves in our bubble, keep ourselves feeling safe and comfortable and that sort of thing and go outside of that and we get uncomfortable because that's life, right? And so we really work with people to go, okay, here's an uncomfortable feeling, let's be with that, let's experience it, let's not try to do something to get rid of it, let's just go, okay, I can have this hard feeling, I can make room for it, I can experience it, I can describe it instead of, oh no, I can't, I need to feel better, let's get out of the situation, let's do all
yeah,
the deep breathing, like those things, not to say that we stop doing things that make ourselves feel better, but we really build that capacity to be present and aware and connected with difficult thoughts, feelings, experiences, and still choose our actions with intention. And
yeah, yeah. And I guess I want to get across how this is all internal. So a lot of
yeah,
people think about OCD as, outwardly engaging in compulsions like cleaning and not wanting to touch things that are contaminated. So contamination OCD is the most common probably form of OCD that you'll hear talked about, or being really organized and yeah, not liking things out of place. Whereas this is a lot of people refer to it as pure OCD, but I'm not sure if that is widely used, but I've heard it. And there was a series called Puro, but yeah, it's basically this is all going on internally. It's you're fighting with the thoughts within your mind. So the compulsions are like rumination. So not even just arguing with the thought itself, but it may be that you're literally just sat there going through your whole life trying to find evidence that either proves you guilty or not guilty of whatever the thought is. And within that, your mind can even make up scenarios that didn't actually happen because you're
mm,
just so unwell. And
Yeah.
And then it just, yeah, just it's just a vicious circle if you don't get a therapist that knows what they're doing.
So that's what you did.
I did. But so basically I accepted the support. I started medication. It took a really long time for the medication to work. The mental health nurse come out first actually, and then I accepted the medication. So it was, yeah, mental health nurse, building rapport with them, then psychiatrist phone call. Medication was sertraline, which I'm still on now.
Yeah.
And it
And that
was,
usually like
yeah,
6, 8 weeks, right? That's
took
just
a really long time. So
yeah.
they said it would be probably, I think they said anything from 2 to 6 weeks. It
Okay.
took me 8 weeks, and I was ringing the crisis line a lot, crying, saying it's not working, it's making me worse, it's
Mm,
making me feel more suicidal. It was
mm,
making me feel like numb as well, but not in a good way. It was like numb to not engaging with my children, not wanting to leave the house,
mm,
and just ruminating constantly in my mind. I guess to someone else, you might look a bit psychotic because you're irritable. You don't want anyone to even talk to you because you're just constantly trying to find out what's happened. And you're trying to reassure yourself and get answers. And that was sometimes through Google as well. I would just be constantly researching, like, what is wrong with me? What is somebody that would harm someone? Trying to compare myself to people that had committed crimes. Like, what are they like? And what was their childhood like? What was my childhood like? And trying to really dig into so much stuff
am
that
I
was,
really safe? Really? Like you're trying
yeah.
to
Are my family
different.
safe? Am I safe?
Yeah, yeah.
I believed it so much, and it feels ridiculous now to look back on. But in that period, I was just so unwell.
Yeah.
So yeah, whilst the medication was doing its thing, I was just, yeah, worse. And I was compulsively reading books as well. I've got two of them. Two of them here. Just spent so much time overcoming unwanted intrusive thoughts. So it's a CBT based guide to getting over frightening, obsessive, or disturbing thoughts. And that one's actually quite good. It doesn't say that it uses ACT, but I would say that it's definitely using ACT in that book. And then this was the one that was recommended by the NHS is Break Free from OCD.
Okay.
So that in England is recommended by the National Health Service. So I was reading them like front to back numerous times and listening to podcasts and all sorts. So yeah, doing that, my mental health nurse was advising that I only maybe have an hour a day where I just read stuff, factual, scientific stuff that, yeah, isn't going to make things worse. And if there's anything I read that I'm unsure of, to talk to them about it rather than spiraling or whatever. But yeah, that was still seen as a compulsion. So I gradually had to stop reading about stuff for a period of time so that it was more of a healthy education, like trying to educate myself rather than trying to find answers to get better. So I had to see it in a different way. But yeah, I had the mental health nurse coming to see me. I had an occupational therapist come to see me. Yeah, they did something called video interactive guidance, VIG.
Okay. I don't
So
know that
yeah,
one.
no, so that was interesting, and I think I did it too soon. I wasn't well enough. I think because of the content of my thoughts, I wasn't a good candidate for it,
Mm,
probably because it involves filming you with your baby, which felt really uncomfortable for me anyway, to hold them. I didn't want to hold them a lot of the time. And yeah, being filmed holding them, and then they go away with the video, come back and see you another time, go through like either the footage with you or the photos. And I guess they ask you for your thoughts around what you're seeing, but they also try to help you to see that you have got a healthy attachment or bond with your child. They were a really nice OT, and I'm sorry if you listen to this. I don't think that they had maybe read my notes. I don't think they fully appreciated the intrusive thoughts that I was having, because some of the comments made were about how I was repositioning them on my lap and things. And that was seen as me trying to protect them or make sure they were comfortable, when in actual fact it was because I didn't want them touching me. I felt that I was making them safe by moving them further away from me, but I was too afraid to say that, so I just sort of humoured them and was like, "Oh, yeah, no, that's lovely. Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're"
very nice. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
thank goodness we're bonding. Yeah.
And
And
I guess that if it's incongruent, right, for you and your experience is different, I can see where it's not super effective. Any approach that might be trying to tell you something that's incongruent with your experience.
yeah, yeah, it just felt I guess it felt a bit fluffy, and I asked not to do any more sessions. So I only actually did one video recording.
Yeah.
And I think later down the line, when I was a bit more not believing my thoughts and feeling more comfortable holding him and bonding with him, I don't know. I guess it was just because of the theme that I had, the intrusive thoughts, and the theme was not really maybe compatible with that at the time. But I can see how it's fantastic for people who are having different themed thoughts, maybe. But I
Yeah.
was just really conscious about contact with them.
Yeah.
And I would get not just thoughts, but images come into my head. And it was really hard to just sit, and they tried to help me anchor into the baby's noises and things like that, but it just felt uncomfortable because I was just not there yet.
Yeah.
Um,
That makes sense.
yeah,
And then
I
and we've all tried things with clients, right? That's part
yeah,
of this co-creating journey is we try a little bit of that. Okay, I need to go find some other tools, right? It's a beautiful way to be a therapist is to
yeah.
bring in our tools, see how they go, get some feedback, we adjust, we reapproach, and it's so
Exactly,
normal.
and they were learning video integrated interactive guidance, so they were new to applying it as well. They were so lovely, I was like, "I don't want to tell you." I was just like, "You've done a great job, okay, thank you." And obviously being an OT as well, I was just like, "This is the only OT I've seen in my whole process of, yeah,
Yeah.
treatment. Well done." Because I know we
Yay,
get hard
let's move on.
times.
So get
Um
that wanting to be the best patient. Like totally.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, I had that. Then I did eventually start getting therapy because all this time I'm being seen by the mental health nurse who was absolutely lovely, was doing, I guess, like the basic sort of teachings of CBT, intrusive thoughts on their laptop. Like I was watching videos with them, but mostly they were just like a friend and company to me.
Okay.
Someone I could actually tell really twisted things to, which was to get reassurance at the time.
Yeah.
Um, and they would they were quite good at saying, "Is this reassurance seeking?" and teaching me about what I was doing and are there other things I could maybe be doing. And yeah, so they were just really lovely. And then I eventually was able to come off the waiting list, see the therapist, which did mean going into it was a mental health hospital that I used to work at. So that felt a bit strange,
Yeah, for sure.
being in the waiting room of somewhere where I used to work. I didn't work in the perinatal side, but in the other units I did work. And it was funny because one of the alarms went off while I was there for when everyone needs to come in, potentially maybe someone's going to go into seclusion or something. They just press this alarm to call everyone. And so the alarm was going off when I was there. And it was weird because I felt like I needed to go into work mode and go and
I can
help.
help you. Yeah. How can I help?
Yeah, yeah, but then I was like, "No," and there was the odd occasion where I actually took my baby with me as well to the sessions, which felt really weird, but also good at times. I think it was yeah, it was sometimes it felt hard, other times I thought, "This is really useful to have them here with me," and it was mostly just because I didn't have anyone who could have him. So yeah, he came, and that to be honest, it was very much I think they thought I was going in there for gold standard OCD treatment initially, but it ended up being more of a basically they were going on maternity leave. So we only had 12 sessions together. So we prioritized most of my sessions were doing a trauma timeline
Okay.
because a lot of my childhood trauma was very much attached to my theme of OCD. And it was absolutely a combination of like almost like post traumatic stress and OCD.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I was getting so stuck on things. And I know I had like smells coming and memories and tastes in my mouth. And it was all just very yeah, it needed so much unpicking. So we just, yeah, started with a trauma line. And that in
Yes,
itself
and in that
just
indication in that is that one could keep working on the OCD, but the OCD is probably a symptom of the trauma. And if one could go back and address some of the trauma, some of that OCD stuff might improve. And not that you do one or the other, you're probably doing both, but
yeah,
was that
and
sort of the
I
thinking?
maybe they were trying to work out, is it trauma or OCD as well at the time? But obviously, with all the symptoms I had with rumination and all that, it was very much OCD, but definitely a really strong link with past memories and experiences as well that it then, I guess, adapted into this theme. And I think that can be a thing with the theme that you get. It can be linked to past experiences. Same with like contamination and things. If you've had someone in the family who's been really sick or whatever it is, COVID, people can then be more likely to, yeah, adopt certain themes. So yeah, we did a lot of that. And then we did eventually, to be honest, my memory's a bit rusty, but I think we started talking about starting ERP, exposure response prevention. But then they did go on maternity leave, but I got stepped down to another therapist. So I was initially with a woman, and I then got stepped down to a therapist that was male. And I actually really did like them. There was the odd thing they did that I was a bit like one of the sessions they showed me a picture of their child, and I think it was to show that they trusted me even though I had messed up thoughts. But at the same time, I felt a bit like, I don't know, like it was a bit of a, I guess I felt a bit patronized, but at the same time, it was nice they felt safe to show me that.
Right.
Um, but it was just, it's just such an awkward thing to to be receiving treatment for, and I guess that continued for a long time, the feeling of awkwardness and being accepting one minute and then maybe putting my guard up again and being like, but I'm a professional, I work with children, so this is ridiculous. So I can't have this theme. It just needs to, I start, I almost get angry, like it just needs to, yeah, like just go away now. Like I know who I am. But then the more angry I got, the more it would come back with a vengeance.
Mhm.
And yeah, just so I did go up and down with getting better, getting poorly again. Eventually he did some exposure. Like I had to imagine things, and some of it was really uncomfortable. Had to imagine like my worst fears, sometimes whilst looking at pictures of people I love. So it was really hard stuff. Had to do things like say my thoughts in a silly voice,
Mhm.
record myself completing, they called it like a loop. So it's
Mhm.
like you're recording maybe like a playful story that you're creating about these really messed up thoughts that feel scary to say out loud and record, and then have on your phone, which of course you're then like, what if someone steals my phone and all this other stuff? So yeah, the recovery was, it was really hard. I had to do some really hard things. And I think it wasn't really considered that like I'm neurodivergent as well and have like certain sensory sensitivities. And I think it was really traumatizing as well. I think it helped, but also it was quite traumatizing to think back to some of the visualizations and that we did. I found it really hard, and it makes me feel a lump in my throat now just thinking about it because it was too much for my nervous system to
Yeah.
experience,
Do you know?
especially like remotely.
Yes, absolutely. And what's interesting too, I've done a lot of exposure therapy with clients in vivo, like out, and very often clients off work and can't go near their workplace. Usually that's a hospital. And we're
Yeah.
doing this gradual exposure. And even though I love ACT, as you know, it's my thing. Everything I do is ACT. I actually use the CBT version of exposure therapy, not the ACT version, because
Okay.
I don't want to jump too far. I've had so much success with, okay, let's make this uncomfortable but not unbearable. And
Yeah.
keep doing that until that's less uncomfortable. And then we can step it up a little bit, but really trying to work in those middle levels of discomfort and master them before progressing and give the client a sense of we're not going to go too far too quick because we have to go through these steps. Whereas
Yeah.
the ACT exposure is a lot of, hey, let's just go do it and show you that it's okay. Prove to your nervous system that we just went into this really uncomfortable place and you're still here. And I appreciate the intention of it and oversimplification. Like anyone who's listening who knows more about those things, there are different layers, but I tend to avoid that because it sensitizes, right? I want a more controlled build of confidence that's gradual, that's a little bit like we approach breaking down most of our occupations into the smaller components.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it really is, it's like the bottom up, top down approach, like thinking about what that person's nervous system is doing. And I'm doing a bit of learning about that at the moment with Primal Trust.
Okay.
Don't know if you've heard of them, but
No.
they do free practitioner training. So yeah, I'm doing some work with them at the moment, which is very much about working with your client's nervous system before going into all the other stuff, the psychological aspect. I mentioned to you about inference CBT, so ICBT,
Yeah.
and I've been learning a bit about that, and I am wondering if that's it sounds like they both do different things, ACT and ICBT, like they almost complement each other. I don't feel confident enough to fully summarize the difference between the two at the moment, but from ICBT, it seems more sensory focused. So
Okay.
it's really about it's very neurodivergent affirming and it's OCD specific in terms of treatment. So it yeah, it's looking at that person's sensory needs and making sure that they're feeling safe within their nervous system before going on to the other things.
Right.
And it also views thoughts in a different way. But yeah, that could be a whole nother podcast. But
Yeah.
that I really recommend looking into that. I'm still really interested in learning more about it. But it
Very
sounds
cool.
really good. But yeah, for me, I didn't get the ICPT. I wish I did. But I found out about ACT on my own actually through the obsessive research that I was doing, multiple podcasts. I did write a few of them down. So one of the people I really loved was Kimberly Quinlan. I don't know if
Mhm.
you've heard of them. They've got Your Anxiety Toolbox podcast and they're a therapist and anxiety specialist and they experienced I think it was relational OCD, so intrusive thoughts about I think it was like being unfaithful to their partner, and there's so many different things you can get. It blew my mind once I started learning more about OCD. She had some really amazing podcasts on radical self-compassion
Mm.
and mindfulness, combined with things like ACT and working with intrusive thoughts. And she also had some like guided meditation talks that
Mhm.
I was listening to in the bath. And I just remember feeling like, yeah, there's another way of doing my treatment. And I think I need to take this on and do
Mhm.
things my own way a little bit. It's not to say the help I had through the perinatal team wasn't helpful because it really was. But
Mhm.
definitely the other, yeah, the people that I found through my own research were really beneficial to my recovery as well. There's also OCD Stories, which is a podcast. And I remember hearing some people talk about themes very similar, if not the same as mine. It just made me feel validated and human to know that other people are going through this too. And funnily, quite a lot of them were professionals. So I think because you have that added, it's that you hold yourself on a high pedestal, don't you? You're like, I am the expert here. So
I'm
how
immune and should not be having these problems.
yeah, exactly. I'm the one who helps people. So how is this happening to me? But actually, it's really common to happen to professionals, and a lot of them are really highly intelligent, but
Mhm.
yeah, just doing really well and experiencing similar things, if not the same as what I did. Quite a lot of therapists that I found are actually survivors like myself. So they've experienced it, they know how horrible it is. They haven't had the right treatment. So they've then felt empowered, and I guess you feel like it's something I can't think of the right word, but you feel like I must be the person to advocate for this area because it's underserved. Not enough people know about it and talk about it out of fear and shame. So it's
And is
taken
that the loop back to the start of the story where you started your private practice, not working in perinatal mental health specifically, but you did this
yeah,
podcast as a passion project because of your lived experience.
yeah.
So circle it back for us. What did you do with your business?
Yeah, so eventually I did these podcasts with some of my friends that I met through OCD Action who were doing the webinars and talks that I went to. And I had people messaging me saying, I listened to your podcast. It really resonated with me. What I went through years ago or what I'm going through right now is lots of different people. And still now, people contacting me some of them saying they're crying listening to it, and yeah, just really reaching out to me. So I guess it just felt, it wasn't even necessarily that they wanted me for treatment, but they just wanted me to know that it was really important to them and really validating that they were able to listen to our stories. And I think just that feeling that it gave me, and I guess the motivation I have within because of my own experience, it just clicked. I was like, this is what I need to be doing. And I was speaking to someone yesterday. They want me to do a report for their child. It's someone that I've been talking to for quite a long time. They want me to do a report for their child. And we were talking about that. And I'm very passionate about working with children. But they then started talking to me about my perinatal stuff. And she said, when you were talking about my son, and then you transitioned to talking about perinatal stuff, she said your eyes started to sparkle.
Mm.
It's like perinatal mental health is what you need to be doing. And I was like, do you still want me to do the report for your son though? She's, yeah, of course. But perinatal, she's, yeah, your eyes sparkle. This is what you need to be doing. And yeah, so I guess it's nice that I didn't go out of anger or anything. It just traveled itself. Yeah,
And what a
just
gift to have that reflected back to you, because we often have obviously there's a lot of work. It's well established that families are looking for OTs to work with their neurodivergent children.
yeah,
This the business path that makes all the sense. And then when somebody can reflect back to you this, you light up. There's this passion. You've pursued it, right, as your passion. And I
yeah,
think about Act Two and that sense of that congruence with who you are, right? And
yeah,
choosing occupations that feel aligned with that essence of who you are and engaging
yeah.
bit by bit in more of those. Was your path to the business as it is today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm trying to network at the moment, very much in the infancy of it still. But yeah, I've put myself forward to do some talks, whether that be with perinatal, neonatal, or premature baby charities and services, or OCD specific services. I'm just contacting them all, and I've had some really positive conversations and feedback. And yeah, I feel really proud and excited because I think
Mm.
it's going to be a really great thing, not just because of my experience with perinatal OCD, but I think also with being queer and neurodivergent as well. So bringing that element into it is not something everyone is able to put out there into the world. So I feel privileged that I'm able to do that because there's many people like myself, but wouldn't feel comfortable opening up about these things. And I'm still, I wouldn't say it's a breeze, it's still tricky, but I definitely have so much passion that I'm doing the nervous system work. I'm still in, I would say I'm still in recovery, but I'm doing the work. I don't think I'm leaking my trauma out onto other people because I'm very much in control of that and aware and managing that. But I do like to put my story out there, not to, I don't want to overshare and traumatize people, but I really do want people to realize the extent of perinatal OCD and in the more taboo sense because it's so common but so talked about.
And I think that the vulnerability and intentionality with which you bring that, like in doing the work that you've done on yourself and sharing from a grounded place, not a dysregulated place, I think those are really good, key, important things when we're choosing to share or not share publicly. And we want to create safety for others. I
Yeah,
think those are really good choices that you're sharing for a purpose. And I share, like in my personal use of self in my therapy with clients, I often, when I'm
yeah,
about to tell a story, being a neurodivergent person myself, I pause to think, is this for me or for them? And often I'll say, hey, is it okay if I share this thing? Here's my intention, but it is a personal story. And give them the choice to say yes or no. But it's that chicken. Why am I doing this?
yeah,
Coming from a grounded place so we're not transferring trauma. And also, there's that the more we can, as people who are willing to share our neurodivergence, our trauma, our experiences with the public, we're helping somebody out there who's listening feel a little bit safer in
yeah,
their own experience where they feel really alone. And so I really hold these platforms as a place of honor so that if I can show what sometimes maybe I feel a little bit weird or a little bit shameful about, and others go, oh, Me too. It's amazing how healing that
Yeah.
is for me, and that's not why I'm doing it, but
Yeah.
hoping that they're feeling less alone. Somebody out there is driving to their next client, hearing
Yeah.
your story and going, "Oh, I thought it was just me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Else
And
out
that's
there."
That's what's so special about it. And I guess for me too, receiving these messages is like I've even had other people that other professionals, and some of them have even been OTs saying I experienced that theme, and I really worried about it for the same reasons you did because I work with children or vulnerable people, whatever it may be. So they're like, thank you for being brave and speaking out.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's you're not it's not a bad thing, you that is the whole point of ACT, is knowing that, okay, the thoughts were scary. I always think about people who write horror movies, like, how messed up have their thoughts got to be to write these films, produce these films? So if you think about it like that, really helps me to think, God, my OCD was almost just it was a horror movie on replay and I couldn't turn it off. I didn't like the film, but it's there. It might still pop up now, and that's okay. It's just thoughts. Everybody has them. There's also this article that one of the therapists shared with me. It was a study done years ago on some students, university students, and it was asking them to say what intrusive thoughts they had.
Mm.
And it was really I'll have to share it with you. It's really interesting to they're saying what dark thoughts they had, and it was like 90 odd percent of people have these thoughts, these really taboo, intrusive thoughts, but they just react to them differently. So that's the difference with OCD, is someone else will have a really dark thought and think, "Ugh, that was weird. Anyway, what was I doing?" Whereas OCD, you're like, that meant something about me. What does this mean? I must get an answer. And then you just spiral and it gets worse. And that is the difference. A mind that is able to process thoughts in a neutral way, as opposed to someone
Yeah.
who's
It's more
entangled.
disruptive for
Y-
maybe, and yeah, in their
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. That makes a
yeah,
lot of sense.
absolutely.
Wow.
I feel like there's so much I could just go on and on, because obviously it was just such a journey. Yeah, using it
Really.
for goodness now.
I'm really grateful that Jen shared this story with us and wanted to share it during the UK's Maternal Mental Health Week. It's such a beautiful reminder of how profoundly words matter and how the right words at the right moment and how being truly seen can be the beginning of everything. Be sure to check Jen out. We'll have their links in the comments and show notes. They're doing really important work through through OT intuition. And right now, they have something really exciting and meaningful on the go. I'll let Jen tell you about it.
Occupational therapist and certified coach and founder of OT Intuition. This Perinatal Mental Health Week, I would like to finally share with you something I'm building that I'm really proud of, is the Intuitive Perinatal Collective. It's a membership which will provide on-demand, preventative and in-the-moment support for minds that are already spiraling and in need of support now. But as we know, many are, even when in crisis, put onto long NHS wait lists and continue to spiral whilst they wait to receive support. So at the moment, I have a crowdfunder. This is aimed at low income families. It's to support them to access the membership, but also to access optional one to one therapy with myself. So, this is taking preventative measures if you're already someone that knows you are vulnerable to becoming unwell again throughout your pregnancy journey. And this can also involve re traumatization of past trauma and relationships that you've had. This is something that a lot of people talk about when they become parents, that this stuff can resurface and cause usually issues around mental health, but also attachment and bonding challenges. So we want to come in and have things in place before you even begin your conception journey, to have that preventative plan and strategies and just overall education, about what it's going to mean to become a parent and things that might come up. So that's a preventative approach. So that will come in the form of on-demand access to, I'll have blogs, I'll have resources, workshops, and there'll be optional access to group connection calls and one-to-one sessions with myself. And so it supports for parents, carers, surrogates, and I specialise in supporting neurodivergent and LGBTQIA plus individuals and families. And then for the infant, you are supporting their regulation. Your nervous system is their home. So a lot of parents put off working on themselves, but actually by supporting yourself, you're supporting your baby and others in your family. And this also goes for other parents, partners, family members that are involved. They can get involved in this support as well and support you with this. And the goal is that you're going to have professional support available in the moment, not when the waitlist determines that you can access support. So please access the crowdfunder link. And if you're able to, pledge support. If you're not able to, please share. Anything is supportive at this stage. So thank you so much.
If you're enjoying the Brave OT podcast, I invite you to share it with a friend. Rate it if your platform allows you to rate it. And I'd love any comments that you might be able to make. As always, be brave, OTs.